Dash! I got him!
My name is Dash Rendar. If you don't know, I am a sling enthusiast. I've been doing it for many years.
I'm actually proud of this one. I did a good shot. Try and put as much power in as possible. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. Today we have something very special in store for you guys. We're going to be taking a look at one of those most ancient of weapons, the sling. We're also going to be joined by a very special guest, which is very exciting. Now, the sling is an interesting weapon because I reckon the first time that I ever heard about it would have been where most people probably heard about the sling, and that is the fable, the story of obviously David versus Goliath. You have a big hulking warrior versus, David, who's only armed with something like the sling, and he comes out victorious. And ever since then, I thought it would be really, really cool to not only test, but see how effective they truly are. There are a lot of positives that I see to a sling. It's a very simple design. It's very easy to make. It's very easy to carry and travel with. On top of that, the ammunition is just something that is heavy that can fit in the pouch. So it doesn't really take up much space, and you obviously can use it in most places that have heavy sort of rocks around, which is most places, right? So the sling, I think, in its concept is a really, really cool weapon, and I want to put it to the test. So I reached out to Dash Rendar, another creator who is obviously very proficient with a sling, and he sent through this short training video that helped make it work for me. And I wanted to show it to you guys in case you're running into the same issues or you want to just get started with a sling. Now don't worry, Dash will introduce himself properly later in the episode, but for now, let's take a look at some of the basics of how to use a sling.
All right, let's talk about the sling. This is a split pouch Ballistic sling. That's the one here and here. You can have ones with a hammock as well. This one has a little bit of a whip tail on it, so it makes that snap noise when you get a good shot. Make sure you get your placements right. I prefer middle finger through the loop, 2 fingers through the stopper knot. The way that it works is a lot of people think it's just like you accelerate on top and then but really, you're gonna go very slow in the beginning and then you explode out into it, almost like you're throwing a cross, a punch, or throwing a baseball. So you see it here, and when I do that, I just do that just to keep momentum in it. But when I'm ready to go and release, then your whole body explodes out into it. And you also don't need to spin it. As long as you're able to drop it back, come over the top, and release it like that, that's going to be just fine and have a lot of power behind it. So you don't need to spin. You can be just as devastating, powerful, and accurate with a really quick snapshot.
So we're out here ready to test our sling. Now, before we actually get into the meat of today's episode, I will tell you and show you what I've actually got here and what I've made essentially. So starting off with the sling. This one here is a paracord sling that I just simply, threaded together. There are tutorials online how to make these. They seem to be very simple, very easy, and they do work. But to be fair, at least from what I can tell, is that making any sort of sling is relatively easy and straightforward. This is just the one that I found to be the most reasonable for me because I had a bunch of paracord laying around. Now, when it comes to the projectiles, there is a lot of different variability that we can go with, and we will get into some other types, some more historical types a little bit later. But what I got is a golf ball. This has a nice bright orange color. It also has a lot of weight and heft to it, while at the same time being easy to see on camera for you guys. This one here is a little squishy ball. This one's just for like practice purposes to see if I can kind of get my aim in. With that out of the way, with my gear, what I've got ready to go, let's try and throw sling. Let's try and sling some things. Loose, is it loose for a sling? I don't know. I think Dash will have to correct me on that one. So this here is just a soft little squishy ball, and this is what I've been using as kind of like my practice medium to try and get my shots somewhat on target. Ooh. I got a snap on that one. So just before we start loosing some rocks and some arrows and see if I can even get close to hitting a target, I highly doubt it. But before we do, I actually wanted to tell you guys a little bit of a story. You see, I have tested countless different weapons on the channel. Screen tested, after all. We've been doing this for a couple of years at this point, and we've done some really crazy and dangerous things. But not once have I ever been concerned, worried, or apprehensive, or even a little bit nervous. It's just not something that's ever happened. Until now. The sling is one of those weapons that truly does make me a little bit nervous to use. And the reason why actually stems back to my childhood. So, when I was a little kid, I was gifted for like a birthday or Christmas or whatever it was, a bolo tie. Now, if you know what a bolo tie is, that's awesome. If you don't, it is that little silver thing that like cowboys wear in a whole bunch of westerns and things like that. It's called a bolo tie, little thing with like a turquoise. I'll throw up a photo so you guys know what it is. I got gifted one. Now, when I got gifted this, it was really heavy. It had a, weight, had a little bit of a cord, and so I was swinging it around, kind of very much like this. And then I decided, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start swinging it above my head. Really good, right? And then I said to myself, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start bringing it down and down, but I didn't actually duck. And all of a sudden, I smashed myself in the eye. I actually nearly took out one of my eyes. I have a scar on the underside of my eyebrow from getting smashed in the face by a bolo tie because I was a dumb little child. Now, what's that got to do with slings? Nothing really, but because they're so similar in their, I would say, feel in the hand, it just makes me a little bit sweaty on the palms. So this is something that I have genuinely been avoiding doing for like a year now. So you guys are going to be getting a noob experience. Like I'm not good at this. I don't think I'm good at this, and I have not been, practicing for years at this point. So I will see what I can do, and then we'll pass it off to the professional. But I thought I should mention this is genuinely an episode where I am not confident in my abilities. Let's see if we can hit something. All right, first shot, let's try it against a ballistic head. Let's see if I can even hit it from this distance. Here goes nothing. Ooh, I was so close. I was like this far away from it. Second attempt. Shit! Right on the cheekbone. We actually fractured the cheekbone there. Dash! I got him! Look at that! The golf ball, that's actually pretty farly embedded in there. I'm actually proud of this one. I did a good shot. Let's go. So obviously when I do this, I'm not going to be able to do it in like 3 to 4 seconds, especially when I'm trying to aim and all that sort of stuff. So I'm a little bit slower to reload than Dash, which I think is a fair statement. That one's gone. Oh shit. Boom! Cracked right in the skull there. Right in the center. And that caved in the skull a little bit. You're not going to be able to see it because of the translucency of the ballistic head, but well, that is death. Or we can actually see a little bit of blood leaking out, starting to propagate out. So needless to say, I think you'll die from that one. Oh no. Straight in the face. I think that hit right here, impacted. That is your teeth smashed in. Yep. Next test I wanted to do was a bit of long distance. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to hit anything, but I do want to see if I can clear the entire pond here. See if we can get all the way over. So hopefully this will still be visible in the air. I'm going to do a big anime twirl swirl shot. Try and put as much power in as possible. Let's see what happens. We are way over. Oof. That one was far. it in the pond over there. So for this next test, I wasn't able to get as much as I wanted. It was at the end of the day, it was raining, my camera died, my slow-mo camera was about to die, and my microphone ran out of battery, so there's no audio. But essentially, I wanted to put the sling up against some armor. So specifically what I used it against was Tony's Battle Ready helm. This is a proper combat grade helm, and I wanted to see what the sling could do to it. And as you can see, it did leave quite a reasonable dent. Now, obviously this wouldn't be lethal, but it would probably have your head ringing. So I wanted to get more, but I couldn't on the day, sadly. So I think that is probably the best that I'm gonna get with the sling. Like I said, I'm not really trained with this thing at all, but I do hope that I was at least able to show some of the potential of the sling. But of course, that is why I brought on Dash today, because he has far more experience. And also there was a bunch of questions that I just don't think that I can give you guys the answer to. So these were the questions that I had burning most in my mind. But before we get to that, I'll let Dash introduce himself properly.
My name is Dash Rendar. If you don't know, I am a sling enthusiast. I've been doing it for many years. I was the consultant for David on the House of David. I actually spent some time in Greece training him. And prior to this video, I sent Tyrannith a training video a couple weeks ago. So hopefully he's been drilling that out and repping that out. But I'm here to give a little perspective on someone who's a little more trained with the sling as far as what the devastating effects are, answer some of the questions he may have, and also, of course, just provide some fun, impactful hits against armor, dummies, and things like that.
The first question that I had for him was, how quickly can you actually reload a swing? How quickly can you get a shot off, right? Because if we compare the sling to something like a bow, you can obviously fire very quickly. There are quick draw methods, quick firing methods. So how quickly, and what is the, the rate of fire, I guess, for a sling?
If I had a sling or a rock ready to go, I could easily just pop it over and loose it quickly, just like that. And then as far as the reload goes, you bring it up, you can set it in, and again, it's a pretty quick movement, just like that. So I would say you can get quite a few off in a second, relatively easily, just boom, 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 boom. So it doesn't take long to get a velocity that can be dangerous with the sling and knock it off very fast. So I would say maybe 3 or 4 seconds is definitely feasible.
So for this next question, I asked Dash, what is the maximum effective distance of a sling? Obviously, there are lots of different types of weapons that have different ranges, right? With the sling, it occupies kind of, I would say, an interesting area, because you have melee weapons, things that are up close and personal. You have things like throwing weapons that can be a little bit further, but again, not that far. And then you have long range weapons where it's like a bow or a crossbow, right? Where you're not only able to hit something far away, but accurately. So where does the sling fall in this scale? What is the maximum effective range of it where it can still be deadly and accurate?
It's kind of hard to say exactly for the maximum effective range, because I'm only so good, right? And so this is like 60, 70 yards. That's all I have out here. And you can see it's very easy to hit an army, let's say, right? So that's probably a pretty big hay bale right there. However, historically, it's noted that people could hit targets from like 100, 200 yards consistently. That's difficult for me to replicate, but I would just have to defer to the fact that they were raised on it, trained on it, and it's still at that point going to be moving fast enough to cause significant damage to an individual or a grouping in an army. But wooden shields, of course, do a wonderful job of stopping the impact of a sling, because it does diffuse it very, very well. So it's like for consistently hitting a target, let's say the dummy, something like that, I'd say probably 35 yards or so is not too difficult in the parameters of hitting a human-sized target. Once I go further back than that, 40, 50 yards, I think that hitting a target like that becomes more difficult for me. So I would say for my effective range, it's 35 to 40 yards just to hit a human-sized target. Now, moving targets is a bit more hard to quantify because, I don't have a moving target out here. All I can say is going from target to target, it's not too difficult from like this yard, which is probably 25, 30 yards. So for me, if I'm trying to go here, 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 that's something that's certainly within the realm of possibility. Something's moving or running across, like it's something that can be done. So just going like a little left to the shield, it's going to be something you can adjust on the fly pretty well. But again, it's not moving, so it's hard for me to say with absolute certainty guarantee how good I would do, but I certainly feel it's less easy than a bow. I've trained with a bow for a lot longer. That's easier for me to get a line on or a beat on, but the sling can still be done with somewhat ease if you practice with it a lot. And again, this is just coming from someone who's doing it for quite a while, but wasn't like raised on it as many of the slingers of old were.
And I wanted to include this because obviously when you see Dash actually loosing these shots, it's so impressive. It doesn't really, you might not think it's that impressive, but it's actually really, really hard, not only to hit a target with a sling, but at such a far distance. It's super, super impressive. So obviously the ammunition is a big selling point on this because you can use a whole bunch of, essentially if it's heavy and it can fit in the pouch, then you're good to go. But Dash obviously has far more experience with this and he's tested a lot of different materials. So I'll let him go over some of the different types of ammunition that you can actually use in your sling and which one is the most effective.
A big thing to consider is the type of shot you are using. Obviously there's river rock, there's clay, hardened baked clay, and there is lead. Lead is superior as it's the best shape and it's also going to have the most staying power because of the density. So that's gonna be much more devastating to a target at further range because you're gonna be able to get higher velocity when you release it. So that being said, I feel even at 100 yards with lead, it can still be fatal, maybe 120. With rock, I think still possibly very fatal, concussive. Clay is the one thing that's a little bit harder because it's gonna dissipate when it hits that target, especially if there's any sort of armor on there. But regardless of that, even if you have armor, one thing I've tested extensively on this channel is sling versus soft armor. So let's say padded armor, linothorax, mail, all of those things, it's still going to crack or break bones underneath it. So it may not necessarily be a kill shot, but it's certainly going to cause very serious damages. And then to the head or the helmet, if you have a helmet on, it's going to help dissolve that, especially if there's spacing in it. But if it makes it anywhere into a part of the body that would be exposed on the skull, even from 100 yards, I for sure feel that's still going to very likely be a lethal hit because it's going to crack and shatter bone. And it may not get you outright, but it is going to cause a serious enough injury with the fracture of the bone where at the time they wouldn't be able to really do any sort of medical procedure to knit that back together. So it's still down the line, I feel, would be a fatal shot.
When it comes to the next question that I had for Dash, it's obviously the biggest fable when it comes to the sling, and that is obviously David versus Goliath. I asked him, I said, do you think it is an underdog story? Because obviously the meme is that, a sling is like a small caliber pistol, right? Versus a guy with a sword. And this was his response.
Well, regarding David and Goliath, to me, I think it's pretty clear cut that it is written to be an underdog story. A sling very much was still a peasant's weapon. It was a lower class weapon. Bronze armor and armor, shields, helmets, that was all signs of wealth and power. And so the idea that someone who had never trained in battle went up against a trained warrior is obviously an underdog story. Now, people say like, oh, David hunted animals and lions and everything, but if you've ever done any combat sports, you're well aware that something outside of that combat, like if you get into an arena or even like a match and you're faced off against someone, you get cotton mouth, you get nervous. Someone like Goliath, as he's written, is someone who is a seasoned pro. So it's like basically like an amateur, combatant versus a UFC fighter, right? There's levels to skill, and David, even though he was skilled with the sling, was very low on that level. So it really, I feel, was written in a way that it's obviously an underdog story. The shot he had, taking any spiritual or, guidance from God out of it, was an incredibly 1 in a million shot. I don't think the sling was brought into single combat often because obviously if you put his shield up, he would have been just fine. So there's no way I think you can look at it any other way. The big hiccup is that when people see the power of a sling and how much devastation it can do, they think it was like, oh, this is cheating, right? You're bringing a gun to a knife fight. But it's really completely different. It takes so much skill to get good. It takes so much skill to thread that needle. You really have one shot to make that happen. And so, no, I think that David was at a massive disadvantage in a ton of different things, and it was written in a way that was like, this is a story we're telling about a hero taking on a superior force, like the absolute top of the top for size, military technology of the time, versus what is basically amounts to like a peasant's weapon or a poor person's weapon.
I absolutely love what Dash is saying here, because when you actually think about it, right? Yes, the sling might be a deadly weapon. If you were to hit someone in the head with something like lead, yeah, that could probably kill someone, obviously, right? But you actually got to hit them first. Oh shit. But when you're wearing things like armor, right, and helmets and things like that, it's obviously going to reduce the damage that, you know, your projectile and your sling is going to do by a lot. So when you actually think about it, it seems kind of unfair. It's like this thing is like a little small caliber pistol. It's like, not really. It's actually super impressive that you're able to nail a shot, obviously directly, you know, like in the forehead or something like that, on a moving target that is obviously a trained warrior. So I agree with Dash 100% on this. It is 100% an underdog story the moment you actually, you know, kind of think about it and you actually get hands-on with one of these things. I actually recommend people check out slings. They're one of those things where it looks simple, but it's really bloody hard. It's really bloody hard. So it can be worn and carried incredibly easy. Its ammunition obviously is something that can be readily available or just found. I really, really like that. It makes it a perfect kind of additional type of item. Doesn't necessarily need to be a main weapon, obviously, but just something that is so super light and easy that you can just carry around wherever you go, whenever you want. I really, really dig that. I'm super into that. I'm gonna finish today's episode out with a message from Dash. I highly recommend you guys check his channel out. I wish that I could have done more testing today. I'm just really shit at this, honestly. And if you want to check out his channel, there'll obviously be links down below, all that sort of stuff. He's a super positive guy. He's super fun to work with as well. So I highly recommend checking him out. All right, Dash, I'll let you finish out for today.
And I just want to say thank you for having me on. Like, I do a lot of fun, silly stuff on my channel with different weapons, but the one that's most near and dear to my heart is the sling, because it really is one that when people think sling, they think Dennis the Menace, right? And so I love to show the power of it, the discipline in order to get good with it, how incredibly devastating it can be if you use it correctly, and just kind of get away from those ideas that it's just like, you know, a toy, right? It really is an ancient weapon that reigned for an incredibly long time on the battlefield.